Good evening and welcome to the week 9 lecture video. Let's go ahead and take a look at the agenda. Okay, so as always, I like to cover the fact that we're taking a three-pronged approach to learning research methods. The first prong is theory, okay? And where do you learn research methods theory? You learn it by reading the textbook and taking the quizzes, and then by us reviewing the quiz in these lecture videos, okay? Just like we're going to do in a second. The second prong is understanding SPSS. It's a very common statistical package that's used for data analysis. So you might have seen a SPSS before in your other classes. This might be the first time. That being said, either way, you're having an opportunity to see my SPSS lectures from my data analysis class and focus on the interpretations, because those interpretations are going to be important for this class. When we get to the results section of the paper, I will be running your analyses and sending you output like you see in the lecture videos, and then you'll be interpreting that output. Okay? So prong 2 is SPSS. Prong 3 is the actual research paper, and that's the point of these really short lectures, right? Also, the discussion forums. It gives you an opportunity to write a piece of your research paper every single week. This is a great strategy. It's worked well for numerous students at this point. And then I always have other assignments, but as we all know, other assignments mean the rough draft. So far, I've given you detailed feedback regarding your hypotheses, and/or I helped you choose your hypotheses. I gave you feedback regarding your article summaries, and you just submitted your introduction rough draft. So I'll be giving you feedback regarding your introduction rough draft. Then after that, methods, results, etc. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at quiz 4. What often creates bias in an internet survey? Demographics of those who use the internet. Again, bias comes in the sample, right? What are the types of people who use the internet most and who are most apt, if you will, or most likely to do some sort of survey on the internet? So now answer that question in your head. Is that representative of the norm, if you will, or the population average of those who live in the United States? Okay, just for an example, or those who live in California, those who live in the world. So again, when we're thinking about sampling bias, that's how we have to think. And again, I'm not an expert at understanding who uses the internet, but I would assume it is younger people. So just in that, looking at that one variable, we can already say, well, our sample is probably biased, because younger people are overrepresented than older people. But again, there's other variables. A measure is said to be valid to the extent that it does what? Accurately measures what it purports to measure. Okay, that's validity. Okay, validity is the measure measuring what we think it's measuring? So going to the Rosenberg self-esteem scale, for example, and personality and gay marriage attitudes, is that Rosenberg self-esteem measure of self-esteem actually measuring self-esteem, or is it not measuring self-esteem? Like, is it measuring happiness? Okay, so if we believe it's actually measuring the concept that we're trying to measure, then it has high validity. Okay, if we don't think it's actually measuring self-esteem, and there's ways to look at this, but we're taking the big picture right now, and in fact it's more of a measure of happiness, then it has low validity. How is face validity determined? By considering if what is asked is relevant to the study. Okay, we'll leave that at that. To what does predictive validity refer? The degree to which the results correlate to something in the future, which makes sense, right? Predictive. Construct validity relies on which two elements? Subjective judgments and empirical data. And again, your book talked about that, so I don't want to get into the weeds. I just want you to understand what validity is. And obviously, these are different types of validity, and your book talks about them in great detail. Why is high validity more important than high reliability? It's better to measure accurately than measure the wrong thing consistently. Well, that makes sense, right? Okay. Let's go back to the Rosenberg self-esteem scale. Well, does it measure self-esteem, right? So we would say, well, okay, it does measure self-esteem. So that's important, right? So reliability would mean, does it measure the same thing over and over and over and over again? So meaning, if I take the Rosenberg self-esteem scale, you know, at midnight, and then I take it again at 1 a.m. and then 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. High reliability would be you get the same score each time. The book is arguing, and it makes sense, that high validity is what matters. Is it actually a measure of self-esteem? Okay. The reliability could be low if I'm taking the Rosenberg self-esteem scale every hour, because maybe things in my life are changing every hour, every day, for example. So then my self-esteem might fluctuate. Okay. So high reliability would be you get the same score every time. Lower reliability would mean you take it multiple times and get different scores. But what's really key is that validity component. Is it actually measuring what we think it's measuring? Okay. Which of the following describes a basic reliability test? You know, let me go back to this real quick. The classic example, and I think it's in the textbook, is weight, right? So high validity and high reliability would be you get on the scale, okay, and it says 180, for example. Or I'll go with me, 200. It says 200, okay? Well, is it valid? Well, I weigh 200 pounds, so if it says 200, well, then it's pretty good, right? It means it's valid. Okay, so that's high validity. High reliability would mean I get off the scale and I get on again, and it still says 200. I get off, get on again, it still says 200. So that'd be high validity, high reliability. So high validity with low reliability would mean there's more of a fluctuation. So it's basically measuring correctly, but maybe I get on and it says, 198, 199, 202, it's kind of around there, but it's not precise. So that high reliability component is you get the same measurement every single time. So once again, high validity, low reliability means it's actually measuring what you think it's supposed to measure, which is weight, but you don't get the same score all the time. But let's say you take the average of all your weights, then it's your true weight. That's the way I like to think about it. And then low validity would mean you get on the scale, and for me, it would say like 100 pounds. Well, it's clearly not measuring weight. And then you could have high reliability in that every time I get on the scale, it says 100 pounds. So it's reliably measuring something, but it's not weight. Just low validity, high reliability. but you could also have low validity, right? So 100 pounds, low reliability. You get that fluctuation. It's not quite always 100, but it's around there. So hopefully that helps. Again, let me know if you have any questions. I really like this textbook. I think it does a great job. Which of the following describes a basic reliability test? Measure twice and compare the results. Yeah, that's it, right? Okay. If you measure twice the Rosenberg self-esteem scale and you have different scores, well, it seems like it has low reliability. If you measure twice and you have about the same score, well, it seems like it's measuring consistently. Which reliability method for determining internal consistency is currently more common? Cronbach's alpha. This is something, you know, we won't actually do for a research paper, but traditionally, if you're working with validated measures like the Rosenberg self-esteem scale, it happens to be like the best example here. You would calculate a Cronbach's alpha, and it tells you how well are the items hanging together, if you will, to measure the concept of self-esteem. So let's say there's one item that's bad. Maybe as we move along in time, it's just not relevant anymore. Okay, so your Cronbach's alpha may be lower because that item's messing up your measurement. Once you take that item and you kick it out, then your reliability index called Cronbach's alpha would increase. So a norm reference test is designed to reveal what? An individual's performance relative to that of a group's. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. Which type of test would be most likely to predict an individual's ability to achieve success as a physician? This is called an aptitude test. Okay. Which type of test would be most likely to measure an individual's knowledge of botany? This would be an achievement test. Okay. So your standard SAT or GRE would be considered an aptitude test. Whereas if you take, for example, the psychology GRE for graduate school, that would be an achievement test because it's specifically testing your knowledge of psychology. Which type of test would be most likely to measure an individual's ability to solve problems? And here we have that concept of an intelligence test. What do researchers reduce by observing behavior unobtrusively? Unobtrusively means you don't know I'm observing the behavior. The participants don't know that the researchers are observing them. Okay. They reduce social desirability effects. Okay. If you're watching a bunch of children and you're trying to document their aggression, just the fact that they know that you're watching them, they may act better, right? Because hitting and pushing, right, shoving to the ground, that's not socially desirable behavior. And as human beings, we have a tendency to try to manage how people think of us. So if you're not watching the children as they play, okay, you're less likely to get them to exhibit these social desirability effects, and you're more likely basically to get the truth, right? Likert scale tests present what range of choices? Strongly agree to strongly disagree. And again, you all are super familiar with these Likert tests. If you look at personality and gay marriage attitudes, there's a lot of Likert tests. Okay. So that was quiz 4. Let me know if you have any questions. This past Sunday, you submitted your introduction rough draft. So this is another point where I will give you feedback. I will leave assignment comments by this Sunday, 11:59 p.m., hopefully sooner. okay? But this is my deadline for myself. Definitely let me know if you can't see my assignment comments. This being said, once I am done, whether it's Sunday at 11:59 p.m. or sooner, I will send you an email. Okay, that's my promise to you through Canvas. Okay, so what do we do in the week 8 discussion assignment? Let's just take a look at that real quick. Okay, write the participant section of your paper. Okay, so this is great. So you're gearing up to submit your methods rough draft. Okay, your methods rough draft consists of the first part being the participant section, the second part being the procedure section. So this is what we're going to work on this week, the procedure section of your paper. Okay. Now remember, and this is sometimes a sticking point, the 10 article summaries that you're doing for part 2 of your introduction section, those studies stay in the introduction section. The method section, starting with your participants and now the procedure, has to do with our study, your study, which is personality and gay marriage attitudes, okay? This is your study, right? Your hypotheses came from here, okay? And then from there, you found articles essentially to figure out what other people have said about your hypotheses, okay? So for the participant section, you summed up our sample, okay? And you noted bias being the fact that the age was really low. The average age was like 19 and a half, right? Okay, is that representative of the California population or the United States population, et cetera, et cetera? So already we saw bias there. We saw bias with the fact that these are all college students. We saw bias with the fact that I believe it was either 37 or 39% of the sample were Asian American. Okay, that's clearly a biased sample because our sample doesn't really, no, not really. It literally doesn't represent the sample of San Bernardino County, for example, or the state of California or the nation. But that's okay. And again, we've talked about this before. Researchers rarely do random sampling just because it's rather impossible and really expensive, right? So we do convenience sampling, and that's how personality and gay marriage attitudes data was collected, by convenience sampling, okay? Literally, people took either Psychology 1 or Psychology 2, which are the 2 intro psych classes at UC Riverside, and for each class, they were required to do 6 hours of research participation, you know, or there's an alternative to watch 6 hours of lectures. But of course, you know, as a psychologist, you're interested to see, hey, what's all this psychological research about, right? So people participated, and this survey took about an hour. So people got a 1 hour credit to participate, but it was a convenience sample, right? And that's why if you really look at the participant section, you can discern that the sample is biased. But hey, that happens, right? So the key is, how do we overcome this bias? And I touched on this last week. We do something called a meta-analysis, okay? So there's a bunch of studies that look like this, okay, or have similar variables. And what you do is you take the data from all of these different studies that have different samples, different participant sections, if you will, and you aggregate or add all the data together, okay? And what happens? You create diversity in your sample. Your sample starts to look more and more like the population. Okay. So going back to the lecture for today, what's the procedure section? Okay, so Don't worry. This is probably the easiest section you'll have to write. And here's why. All you do, you go to Files Week 9. I'll show you right now. Okay, cool. You go to Personality and Gay Marriage Attitude Survey. And you open up the survey, just like I did right here. And all you're doing for this section is you're telling a story. Okay, so you're gonna pretend like you're a participant. And I'm going to talk what you're going to write. So this is what I want you to do. Participants were asked to participate in a study called Personality and Gay Marriage Attitudes. Before participants participated in the study, they were asked to read an informed consent, to place an X in the blank to represent their acceptance of the informed consent, and put a date. Next, participants answered a series of demographics questions, including age, gender, sexual orientation, Kinsey scale, ethnicity, country of birth, generation status, religious affiliation, annual family income, annual personal income, relationship status, college status, current GPA, overall GPA, major GPA. Then participants were asked a series of politically related questions, including political party, political orientation, are you a citizen of the United States? Are you registered to vote? Who did you vote for in the 2004 presidential election, the 2008 presidential election? Then participants were asked to indicate the extent to which they supported the following issues, supported or were against the following issues: Iraq war withdrawal, prayer in schools, et cetera, all the way down to minimum wage increase. Well, yeah, let's not forget same-sex marriage. A lot of people are using that variable. Participants were then asked to indicate what they voted on California Proposition 8 or would have voted on California Proposition 8. Then they were asked to explain or elaborate on what motivated them to vote the way they did. Then participants answered a series of validated measures, including the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale, the Balance F Scale, the Religious Orientation Scale, the Big Five Inventory, specifically including openness and neuroticism, et cetera, do what I'm doing all the way to the end. Okay. So what's the point of the procedure section? The point of the procedure section is to do exactly what I just did. You're trying to explain to the reader of your paper what your study looked like. And you're giving them enough detail that if they wanted to, they could basically replicate it. Especially when you're naming validated measures like Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale, the F Scale. These are literally measures that they can Google and see. Okay. So again, as always, if we go to Files, Week 9 Paper Overview, I'll let it load. Okay, you'll see that file there. So again, you know, obviously you have sample papers that, you know, that you're finding. Give me 1 second. I need to open up the document. So you can use the papers that you're finding for your literature review as a template, you know, because obviously you can learn from my lectures, you can learn from the book, you can learn from each other, but you can also learn from those papers. But again, I have this other resource for you, the paper template for this class. So far we've just done the introduction. So now we're on the method section, right? So last week we did the participant section we're skipping the measures for now. We'll do that next week. And then there's the procedure section. Okay. And actually, this is the procedure I wrote for personality and gay marriage attitudes. So you can kind of have an idea of what it should look like. But literally, I'm telling you, do not overthink it. Okay. Okay. Literally open up the study and do what I just did. Okay. Give a narrative. Tell a story of what the participants participated in. Okay. I think that's good. Let me know if you have any questions. Let's take a look at discussion 9. Okay, part 1, write the procedure section of your paper. Be sure to watch the week 9 lecture video, this video, before you begin. And again, this has to be at least 200 words, which is going to be really easy for this, okay? Part 2, respond to 2 other students. Compare what they wrote to what you learned in the week 9 lecture video. Okay, also, please let them know if something is unclear and if possible, suggest a correction. This is important, okay? I had people come to office hours yesterday, not yesterday, but on Thursday. It feels like yesterday. And they said, you know what? It seems like a few people are doing it differently than I'm doing it, you know, which is what you told us to do in the lecture video. And you know what my response was? The point of the discussion is to let them know that they're doing it incorrectly, right? As a researcher, you're a collaborator. You work with your peers, okay? My team of researchers, we always work together. We collaborate, okay? And that's really what I'm trying to encapsulate, if you will, in this discussion, okay? The peer review is in the discussion. When I give you feedback regarding your hypotheses, article summaries, introduction, methods, results, that's my review of your work. The discussion is an opportunity for you all to review each other's work, okay? And to kind of help you out if you're stumbling. So this is just part of it, right? And obviously, I give my part through assignment comments related to your rough drafts, through you sending me an email, through you coming to office hours. And you all have been really great. You know, there have been terms where, you know, pretty much no one comes to office hours, you know, but I'm always getting students coming to office hours, and it's just awesome, and it inspires me to you know, send all class emails to clarify certain things, and it's all part of the learning process. Okay, so you're doing the week 9 discussion this week. It's due Sunday, and you're also doing your last round of SPSS notes. So definitely enjoy the lecture. Submit your notes and you're done. You'll be done with prong 2 of the class. Well, for now, and then we get into the results section, and then you're actually going to utilize that information. Okay. Before we go, I wanted to remind you that you need to find and create article summaries for 10 articles. Okay. And this is for part 2 of your introduction section, the literature review. Okay, so make sure you're keeping up with that as well. Hey, and that's all I have for you. It's always a pleasure to do these videos. Shoot me an email if you have any questions, and or drop by office hours. Okay, have a great week. Take care. Bye.